Welcome to another episode of the QNAMY Show. On today's episode, we're talking more about deep inner healing work, mental health, plant medicines, and a variety of spiritual practices that can help you unlock your best potential. Walking us through some of these amazing topics is none other than Marisa Franco, who is a Bwiti initiate, medicine carrier, integrative somatic practitioner in training, writer, artist, and international facilitator. She weaves cross-cultural cosmologies and earth-based wisdom back into the progression of consciousness. Her main focus is helping her clients to free their minds from false beliefs and outdated programs to become free from within. From this liberated place, she believes one can truly become a conscious co-creator of their own lives. She utilizes rewiring modalities, quantum healing, and visualizations, as well as deep listening, plant medicines, and non-dual practices to help those uncover wisdom within themselves. Stay tuned for this exciting episode with Marisa Franco. All right, Marisa, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
You have quite an impressive story. I love your journey, and I can't wait for our listeners to hear more about it today. So you have traveled all over the world and studied with some incredible indigenous tribes. One of the stories that really resonated with me to talk about today with you is your journey being initiated into the Bwiti tribe as a Mabundi woman. So I'd love to hear just a little bit more about that from you.
Yeah, so this past summer I went to Gabon, Africa, and got initiated as a Mabundi woman into Bwiti. Bwiti is the study of life. Gabon is also known as the origin of our human species, and everyone has a different kind of story, but that's one where the humans first came, essentially. And the medicine there is Iboga. Iboga is the master plant. And the way that I describe it really is it's this advanced software that can scan our body and really bring us back to our original blueprint, our original place where before there was any traumas, before there was any dissonance within our fields. It's very, very powerful. And when I say that it brings you back to your original blueprint, it's not like it just kind of erases everything for you. You have to have the courage to really remove and move through and integrate a lot of that stuff, which integration is a huge aspect of plant medicine. And the reason that I went into this space is because there were two questions that were circling around me from many of my teachers. And the questions are, who are you and where are you from? And who are you? It's an existential question, really, because, yeah, my name is Marisa Franco, and I'm originally from New Jersey. But that's just one aspect, that's like the physical plane of existence. I wanted to know, really, who am I here, and who do I want to be in this lifetime? And so during the initiation with Iboga into Bwiti, you receive your essence name, your spirit name. It's one of the first visions that you get. And my name was Okume. And Okume means to be a beacon of hope, to be an illumination in the darkness. And as you come to know me more, you'll see that I have been surrounded by a lot of darkness, looking around for the light, not realizing that it was me all along. And it's the same with so many people, right? We're looking around, feeling alone, and then we realize that we have ourselves. So I went really specifically for that reason, and I received so much. I also went through a traditional rite of passage, which was a 4-day journey in, really, and it's designed to emotionally, physically, psychologically, and spiritually break you open, break you past any of your limitations, any of the fears that you have. Everything comes up. So if you have a fear of being abandoned, that's gonna come up. If any fear that you have. And the beautiful thing about it is that as these fears come up and as all these difficulties and challenges arise, you're being held by a community. And the way that this community works too is it points you back to yourself. They hold up a mirror and they're like, no, you're strong enough, you've got this. And that's something that we in the more Western mainstream world, we're only just starting to remember again, is how to operate within community. And the way that I learn best is by immersing myself in these peoples and these places that have not forgotten. And I've been holding these lineages and these torches and moving them forward for the benefit of all. And the more that we can all remember these pieces, the more that we can bring them into our family lives, into our home lives, into our communities and beyond. So as I was going into this space and getting initiated into Mabundi, which is a female warrior lineage, and Bwiti, which is the study of life, I was beginning to remember my purpose, my greater purpose, and to remember who I am and where I come from.
Wow, such a beautiful journey. I mean, you said so much in there that just like resonates to my bones, especially the fact that when you're lost and you're looking around externally for light or hope or whatever, often, you can just be that hope yourself and you can be that light yourself. And that's something that I so strongly want to impart on the listeners listening now that maybe are struggling with something, like you can be your own light, if you just look within. So beautifully said. Thank you so much. I am curious, what led you on this path of healing and looking for experiences like going to Africa and visiting with these tribes and going through these rites of passages and working with these medicines? What was it that really took you on that path?
A deep sense of curiosity and this thing inside of me that knew that there was more to uncover. I grew up in a pretty traditional home. Both my parents were artists, but I lived in a little suburbia area, and I went to a public school, and it just felt like my soul was starving for something else. And I made a decision within me that I was going to find whatever it was I was looking for. And it takes a lot of courage and curiosity to go that route. And you receive so much more than you put out when you choose to really find your own individual path. So that's really what catapulted me into this space, and then beginning to meet so many like-minded individuals. Because this is the thing, our inner world is what creates our outer reality. So when we start playing around with the resonance inside of us and what we really want and also what we really need in life, it's going to start presenting itself. We just have to have the eyes that are trained to see these changes happening. So as I was moving through this new space, I was able to start seeing, oh, here's a teacher. That's the one that I was looking for, or here's that person, or here's that relationship, and everything is starting to work for me. And that's a whole nother thing too, is seeing and realizing that creation, source, universe, God, whatever word you want to call this great mystery, it's all working in our favor as allies. Even the difficulties in our life are helping us transform into a more resilient being, which is ultimately the power that we need right now, is spiritual, emotional, physical, energetic resiliency. And that resiliency is there for us so we can live out these transformative times that we're moving into and living in right now. We're told that we're living in a time of prophecy. And with people that have a sense of awakeness or awareness to them, they can look around their life and be like, yeah, this is a prophetic time. And that doesn't mean that it's easy. It means that change is happening. Our relationship to time is changing. Things are moving quicker because we're advancing quicker. And as we're evolving, our earth is evolving. Our earth is this living, sentient, breathing being. And the more that we bring in a heightened state of awareness and consciousness, it also shoots down to the core of the earth and to the sky. It's as above and so below. It's the inner world that we're changing to see the changes in the outer world. And something that you mentioned earlier and that we're touching on is, when you're in a dark place, you may be the light. Also, whatever you're looking for is probably the gift that you're meant to bring out. And I'll give you an example. My whole life, I was looking for this love, this unconditional love. And the people around me and my parents, they were able to provide me with what they could. But I wanted something a little bit more. I wanted that like deep, nourishing, earth mother, loving energy. And I realized later into my 20s that that was the gift that I was meant to bring out. And that's why I was longing for it, is because I was looking for something actually inside of me. So just to take the opportunity for all of the listeners here as well, that whatever they're looking for, whether it's love or joy or abundance or whatever word you want to call it or whatever you're looking for, it's most likely the thing that you are meant to bring into the world.
Beautiful. You said when we spoke before the show that you have dealt with your own journey with mental health issues. Tell us a little bit about that and what led you on that path to starting to pull on the thread of unwinding the labels and things like that you'd been given by Western society.
So, when I was about 8 years old, I had a lot of really big emotions. And if you go into child psychology, what you can see is that when a child has a lot of big emotions in a family dynamic, the child is usually expressing the unexpressed emotions of the parents or of the caregivers or of the community. So I'm just going to throw that in there that if anyone has a child with really big feelings, look to see if you have any suppressed feelings that they're picking up on, because these are very intuitive beings that are coming into this world. So I had very big feelings, and my parents didn't really know what to do. Again, they could only offer me what they have offered themselves. So my mom brought me to a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and they diagnosed me with schizophrenia, bipolar, ADHD. I mean, basically anything that was in the medical journal, I'm pretty sure they labeled me as. And I was given all sorts of pharmaceuticals. I mean, probably up to 30 different types that I experimented with. And two things happened. I became more suppressed, very numb. It was like I was the yolk in an egg, and the eggshell was getting thicker and thicker and thicker. I really became very disassociated from my reality. And at the same time, I had all these unexpressed emotions that I no longer could express because I was so numb. So this stayed that way for over a decade. And when I went to college, I was still on all of these things, and there was something in me. There was a little light that was like, this doesn't feel right. Something is off. But I didn't have the education or the people around me quite yet to be like, yeah, you're onto something. Keep going, you know? And when I was 19, I got in my car and I took what I thought was, I think, Prozac. But instead, I took my sleeping medication because I also had insomnia, apparently. And I fell asleep at the wheel and I ran into a tree. And after my car crashed into the tree, something radical shifted in me. And as soon as I woke up from being knocked unconscious, my first thought was, I need to get off these pharmaceuticals. And I went to my psychologist the next day and was like, "Hey, this is my plan." And she's like, "Oh no, you can't do that. You can't get you're going to die if you get off of these." And I basically just like gave her the finger and was like, "I'm going to figure this out myself." And that is the kind of grit that you need to choose your own way now. And so I did that. I bought a journal and I weaned myself off, and I gathered different types of facilitators and people around me that could support this process. And then I went into deep research with different adaptogenics like ashwagandha and mucinapurians and all these things that have been around for so long that for me at the time, they're like, oh, this is a better version of pharmaceuticals because there's no really side effects and they're not suppressing me, they're helping me. So I was still in this allopathic symptom based mindset, but I was moving more towards natural remedies. So I was taking the ashwagandha for stress and depression, and the mucinapurians for focus and stamina, and rhodiola for my hormones. And I just started like pumping myself with these things. And over time, I realized actually how easy it was for me to wean off of something that was not helpful and useful for me. But I will say that all those pent up emotions for that decade did slowly come out. But I had the tools and the emotional intelligence at that point to be with them and to nurture them. Because again, what I was always looking for in my life was that love. I was looking for that nurturing too. And I was learning how to nurture myself throughout this process. So that was the beginning of me really unraveling into just plants in general, like herbal adaptogenic plants. And then eventually I went into plant medicines, from psychotropics into psychedelics. But it took me a very long time because I was really scared of having anything that would alter my mind, because for so long I felt altered and I was just coming back into myself. But in 2016, my brother passed away from glioblastoma brain cancer. And for about 3 years, I carried this really heavy grief on me. Like, I was flying to Seattle to see him off in his transition into spirit. And I missed him by 1 hour. I was on the plane and I felt his spirit leave, and it was just really hard for me. So I carried this grief. And my partner at the time was a little bit more advanced in falling into the psychonaut, or the consciousness exploring route. And he's like, why don't you try psilocybin? And I was like, oh, no, I can't. And eventually I did this tiny little microdose. We were in Vietnam looking at a waterfall, and I took the microdose with honey. And I just felt this immense interconnection with all living things, and realizing that my brother's transition wasn't further away from me, it was further to me, and that he was always available. And this heaviness that I carried that was on my shoulders just fell right off. Like this black cape that was on my back of grief, and it just slithered off of me. And immediately there was a rainbow right over the waterfall. And it was in that moment where I was like, this is something special. These medicines are holy and sacred, and they're not drugs. And they don't actually alter our mind in the same way that these pharmaceuticals do. What they actually do is expanding our awareness to everything that is already existing. And that is magical. And that is the mystery that we're living in now.
Wow. I'm just so enamored with your story. I think it's just so relatable for so many people out there who have gone through that journey of being told by Western medicine and society that there's something wrong with them. Take this pill, it will fix you, it will help you, right? We're really often we're hearing these stories now come up where I have the exact same story, where it's like they just throw this bottle of pills at you. You're expected to stay on it so you can be under control, you can have your emotions regulated, you're not going to be a problem to society, right? So and then this story of like coming off of it, realizing they're not serving you, they're numbing you, you're not enjoying life, you're having all kinds of problems like a car accident. Oh my goodness, and then going through this beautiful self-discovery journey where you're leveraging the power of plant medicines and herbs to help yourself really become the fullness of who you really are. So that's so magical, and what a beautiful moment about your brother too. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that can relate to losing someone they love, and gosh, it's just such an incredible journey you've had. So you have really leaned in over the journey that you've had with plant medicines and being with indigenous tribes and cultures. What are some of the biggest lessons that you took away from your time studying with the Bwiti that relate to what you're talking about now? Just your healing journey that you could impart wisdom nuggets with our audience today.
When I first arrived into the village in Gabon, I knew that there was something special that was about to happen. And of course, there was the plant medicines and the traditional ways of living and being close to the earth. But really, the most profound moments for me were the community. So in the village, all the women lived in one area in one village, and all the men lived in another area and village. And there were so many children and grandmothers and grandfathers and elders and mothers and fathers, and they all supported one another. The women were fierce and very tough. Like if you want to know what a warrior is, go into a village in Africa and spend some time with women, because they're tough. And the men actually were, for me, a lot softer. I mean, incredibly resilient and strong and living into their roles. But it was an interesting balance because this village was matriarchal. So it was a feminine flow in this space. And I remember at one moment I was in this ceremony right before my initiation, and it was a music ceremony in the temple. It's about 16 hours long, and we're all sitting on these hard little benches holding our rattles and our plants in our hand, and you have to sit up straight. And there was this one moment where I was leaning forward, and the woman next to me just pushed my shoulders and my chest back and was like, we don't sit like that here. And it took me a moment to realize that what she just did for me was an act of love. of like, you sit up straight because you're presenting yourself to the fire, to the great mystery, to your family now, of how you want to present yourself and how you want to hold yourself. How do you want to appear? Sit up straight. And it was these acts of love that appeared tough at first, and they were, that brought me into this realization that, one, we all have very particular roles to play in communities, but we don't have real communities anymore. So of course people are feeling aimless and without purpose. It's because we find our purpose and our aim by being together. So how do we bring that intelligence back into our world, our mainstream consensus reality? And in some ways, it's designed to not do that, because then we would be more sovereign and self-sufficient. But there is a very quiet revolution that is happening, and we can all begin to see it, right? Things are starting to change. People are wanting to take their power back. People are wanting to remove these ridiculous labels and see actually that they're just gifted. And that's the other thing, being misdiagnosed with schizophrenia in indigenous ways is viewed as the oracle, as the seer, the one that can see beyond this dimension, can see all dimensions that are concurring right now. And funny enough, when I was in my initiation, that's the role that I was given, one who has visions, a seer, an oracle. And, there's two ways to look at these things, right? We can look at it from this allopathic, symptom-based, westernized approach of looking at it as being bad, or a label, which actually is a limit. A label is a limit. And then you can go into another space where it's like, oh, these are gifts that you can give yourself and you can give to your outer community. So that was a really big piece, living in this village and living in this way. And also redefining what wealth is. Because, yeah, money is amazing. Money brought me to Gabon. But as I was there, these people don't have a lot of money, but they're some of the happiest people I've seen. Same thing happened when I went to India. I was in the quote unquote slums, and everyone's face was bright and shiny and smiling, and they were offering me tea and biscuits that they've had very little of. There's a level of generosity and redefining wealth. And I think we could all really look inside too and see, what are we moving towards? What is our North Star? What do we really need? And what is true wealth for us? Because for me, true wealth is living in purpose, in community, and being able to be in service.
I always say wow after every time someone talks on my show, but it's true. It's just wow. It's just so wow. I love these conversations so much because there's so much wisdom to be taken from these moments. There's a lot of people listening right now that, they're not going to be able to go spend time in Africa or sitting with this beautiful medicine that you worked with while you were there. What are some things that you would tell our listeners that they could incorporate into their daily lives here in the United States, right this minute? What are the free, easy, accessible resources that they can tap into to start changing their own narrative?
Something that I often talk with my friends about is life is such a psychedelic trip. When you can just zoom out a little and you start to see your life, you're like, wow, this is pretty trippy. And the tool that I would say that has helped me the most and is available for every single person on this planet is to stop taking things so personally and to detach, not disassociate, but detach, meaning to become a witness to your life, to get really curious about the things that are flowing and moving, and to ultimately know that you can change your reality whenever you want. That's like the big secret, is that you can change your reality whenever you want. The way that you do that is by going inside your own waters, inside your own being, and to start noticing, what am I doing that's creating this reality? I wrote this recently, that if we are seeing reoccurring themes in our life, that it's like creation saying, hey, we really want you to look at this because it's happening again and again and again. And if you don't want that thing that's happening again and again, you're the cycle breaker. That's what we all have in common right now, living in this life, living in this generation, is we are all cycle breakers. And to break something means that you should probably have something in place to then build. You don't want to just be like, pull, break. Okay, what do I do now? One of my teachers, Kuma Ramsey, says that when you pull a root out of your garden, let's say it's ancestral trauma, if you pull that out of your garden, be ready to plant something new, something a little bit more beautiful. So as we're going into our being and into our inner reality and we're seeing things that we don't really like, let's say a lack of self-worth, add in some self-love there. And if you don't know how, find like-minded individuals, find teachers, find guides. We all healers need healing and all teachers need masters. That's just how it works. This is this intergenerational sort of living that we're bringing ourselves into. And we may not have a community in the same way that these indigenous peoples around the world are still stewarding and are still living in, but we can still build community in our own way. For example, I have so many sisters and brothers and teachers and guides that I have around me. It's like one big star, and I'm the centerpiece because I'm living my own experience. But I know that if I go north, south, east, or west, I have support and I have people who love me. So that's what I would also say for anyone that's listening is make sure that your inner circle is loving you and supporting your blossoming and your unfurling. And if there's anything that feels off, start asking these questions of, is this relationship good for me? Is this supporting the person that I'm becoming? Because at the end of the day, we're constantly changing every single moment. I mean, every day we have an opportunity to be someone entirely different if we want. It's just the habits and the mental structures that keep us living the same ordinary life. But again, if you want to change your reality, you have the tools to do that.
I love how you started going into what I would define as intuition and how like your body will tell you if you're listening, to your body exactly, what is right or wrong or where you need to go, where you need to steer. It will prompt you as you go. And so I think that's really powerful. And it's something that I know I would love listeners to take away from this conversation too. Just the power of intuition and how it can help us heal and get recalibrated to our right path. I know that you're a very intuitive being yourself. I mean, especially, with what you just shared earlier about being an oracle and, a seer. And I think that's in every single person. If we start to look and we start to ask, those things will pop up. And just really quickly, I'll, just briefly share even my own journey. The moment that I started to realize I had a problem with where I was full of rage, full of anger, really struggling. Everything in my life, I felt like a victim, to life just being so unfair to me. When I started pulling on the thread of I'm just going to listen to positive affirmations today. Maybe that will help. And I found like Esther Hicks and some other things online. And then I was like, wow, this is actually kind of cool. Like, I'm able to take a moment when I'm feeling dark and turn it into positive by putting on these positive affirmations. Pulling on that thread over the last couple of years, I ended up finding plant medicine. I ended up finding a new community. I ended up being able to hear myself say when something wasn't serving me. So if I was drinking alcohol, I would literally hear myself go, that's all, you should probably stop drinking. That's not for you. And I would stop myself going into like many of my then friends at the time where they were just like these drunk, belligerent messes. And I wasn't because I had listened to myself to stop. And so, it's little things like that, little intuition moments. Like if you start looking, you will find it. If you want healing, you will find it. If you want community, you will find it. And so, just the power of listening to yourself. How has that helped you? How has that shaped you over your journey here?
It's a very beautiful and big question. And I would say that my intuition is completely tethered to the natural world around me. Everyone receives their intuitive voice through different ways. So some people, it's a deep knowing. Some people hear a voice, like the yes and the no feeling that you receive. For me, it's through the earth and what we consider divination. So for example, if I am feeling like I need clarity on something, I'll go out and walk in the woods and hold that question close to my heart and then just let it go and then see what comes through the forest. So let's say that I have a question of, is this relationship serving me? And then I'll be directed to either a falling leaf. and I'll derive meaning from that, or a stream, or a flower that's blooming. And then basically the way that this sort of earth mirroring works is it's connecting to our subconscious. It's connecting to this unknown great mystery inside of us that's actually helping to direct our life. Our subconscious dictates like 90% of our life, and most people don't even have a connection to it. Same thing with the dream state. We spend so much of our time in a dream, and not many people know that they can use that time for education and teaching and traveling and learning about themselves and traveling into that subconscious space that's actually writing out their reality. Some people just go to bed. So it's a good reminder to really utilize all these skills that we have. And I mean, what you said earlier too, when you need the healing, the healer will come. When you need a teaching, the teaching will come. So really what we can all do is just prepare ourselves for these moments that will happen. Because if your soul is ripe and ready for it, it's going to come to you. And it's the exact same thing with my story. It's the exact same thing with your story. It's the exact same thing with so many people's stories. It's just preparing ourselves. And the other thing I want to share too is there's this funny saying, it's like everyone wants to take ayahuasca and no one wants to do the dishes. It's kind of like that, it's a lot of this spiritual work, a lot of this self-work is in the chop wood, carry water era and space. It takes a lot of self-reflection and aloneness and stillness and learning how to be quiet with yourself and noticing what are these thoughts that are coming through. I mean, that's a whole another thing. I was studying with this non-dualist woman in Hawaii named Rashani Rea, and she's like, okay, do you think that you're in control of your thoughts? And I was like, yeah. She's like, okay, sit in meditation for 5 minutes and don't think anything. And it took me 10 seconds to realize that what she was teaching me is that I'm not in control of my thoughts and that I don't own my thoughts. So many people are trying to control their thoughts. How about we just become a witness and start watching these thoughts thinking us? We're not thinking the thoughts. These thoughts are coming through and they're thinking us. And what we have mastery over is not identifying with these things and not taking so many of our thoughts personally. So if we have intrusive thoughts, just let them move through you. Detach. That's why building a witness in meditation is so important, is because we have our own consciousness and we're also connected to the collective consciousness. And so we are going to be having a lot of similar feelings and thoughts moving through our body. That's just how it works. We're all interconnected. That's what in quantum physics, there's the God particle, and it essentially suggests that we are all interconnected with all of life, not just humans. So even the consciousness of plants, the consciousness of stones, of trees, of animals, of rivers, of all the elemental beings, we're all deeply interconnected. So what we are experiencing and moving through is probably what someone else is experiencing and moving through too. Hence why it's so important to share our expression. Whenever we're in communities and we have an opportunity to ask a question, that question is most likely not just for you. Someone else in that group probably has a similar question and needs a certain answer. So we're all working together whether we are aware of it or not. And that's actually something I wanted to mention too with this labeling and the suppression of these pharmaceuticals that we're experiencing. That's also a part of a collective prayer. So there was a time during especially in the 90s and early 2000s and even now, is some part of all of us was not ready and not feeling ready. And so there's a suppression that was happening. And now we're getting to a place where we're like shaking and moving this energy off because our collective prayer is changing. Our collective prayer is moving into living in harmony, in community, living with families again, and feeling purposeful and taking our sovereignty back. That's why so many of us have this dream inside of us. It's because it's a part of a collective dream. And all of the things that we view as negative are also a part of our path. Because when we meet resistance, that's when we build strength. When we see limits, that's when we can push through. It's working with the polarities.
Mm.
And that's something that I've noticed as well. Let's say that you carry resentment, look to the opposite polarity of contentment. That's the positive polarity of it. And that's your medicine. So when you're in a place that doesn't feel good, try to name that thing and find its opposite, and that's the medicine for the poison.
You know, the thing that stands out to me so much, and it just put in plainer terms, is we're just giant radio transmitters. You know, we're picking up and we're receiving messages, and which is why it's so important, going back to our conversation about like hearing ourselves and our self-guidance. Like, we are a giant radio. And so, you know, being able to identify what we own as our own and what is not ours is so important. Like, often people, especially like the label empathetic, you know, people who feel empaths, people who feel other people's energy, you know, so often we look at it as our own, right? Like, oh, wow, I'm feeling like really off and weird and angry. Is it yours? So I love the concept of being a witness and like taking inventory of like, is it actually yours that you're feeling? Are these thoughts actually yours, or are they somebody else's or something else's? You know, that's super important. And I think for me, that realization in my own healing journey was so transformational, because I suffered with intrusive thoughts and just negative patterns and negative loops my entire life, up until I started working with plant medicines and doing some of these sessions with healers like yourself, where I was able to be informed and instructed and finally educated that there's an ability for me to switch these things on and off, or change the channel. Like, if I don't like what's on TV, I can change the channel. So if I don't like what I'm thinking, well, I can change it. I can interrupt it, I can observe it, and I can change it. So I love the concept that you're sharing here about not taking ownership of, you know, feeling like if we're not successful in controlling the thoughts that we think, that we're somehow failing, but that we're just able to observe, like, this is something that we're receiving for some reason, inventory it, witness it, feel it, whatever we need to do to process it out, but change it and move on to something different. I also love the concept you shared about the polar opposite. So Esther Hicks does a really good job talking about this, as does Edgar Casey and a few other great authors that are out there, where they talk about the polarity. And you know, I'll give an example here. Like, if you're feeling really negative about yourself, that you have no worth, I guarantee you the opposite is true, right? You are worthy. You are totally wanted. You just need to shake that thinking and observe so many things around you that are going to reflect your worth, you know, your loved ones, your friends, whatever that may be, which is why the power of community is so important, to help you realize that when you're struggling and when you're forgetting some of those things. So incredibly beautiful stuff. Oh my goodness. So you have taken a lot of this healing work that you've done on yourself over the years, and you've now turned it into something so beautiful, where you're in this position to be giving it back to other people, like this podcast, but you're also a facilitator in healing retreats. You work with plant medicines. You do a lot of different things. You're an author. You do so many incredible, beautiful things that are helping others around you. Tell me a little bit about your journey doing that, and how you work with people.
So traditionally, in many cultures, it takes decades for someone to become a teacher. And nowadays, we are seeing a lot of life coaches that haven't really lived life, and people that are sharing in a way that might not be from a place of true authenticity and lived experiences. And that actually held me back for so long, for better or worse. It took me a really long time to get to the place where I felt that I was ready and prepared to offer back. And it's really because of life moving so quickly for me. I'm a very curious soul, and so I've explored a lot of different dimensionalities of life, and I've lived through so many experiences, and it's gotten to a place where I felt ready to offer something back, offer something tangible and helpful, and to be in service to the greater community of not just humanity, but really all living sentience. My main mission really is for the planet and for people, and supporting everyone's unfurling and becoming, and just knowing through my own personal experience that when we do it together, it becomes a little bit easier. So the way that I've worked with people and I'm working with people now is one-on-ones, which has been so beautiful because it creates this intimate space where you essentially just have someone with you, witnessing you, listening to you, and supporting your journey. And I honestly really wish that I had that in the beginning of all of my spiritual crackings. Not awakening, it was a cracking, because it was like a dark night of a soul. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was going crazy. And the space that I offer a lot of people during these sort of crossroads and transitions in life is to let them know, like, hey, you're not going crazy. You're probably actually becoming more sane. So that's one way. And then I'm about to launch the Luminary Collective, which is actually a vision and a dream that came through when I was in Gabon, Africa. And it's an 8-week course that brings in somatic practices and rewiring techniques and really working with quantum alchemy and quantum physics of how to rewrite your story and to find these core beliefs that we essentially have been donated through our lineages that we actually believe and they're not true. One of them being a lack of self-love or not being good enough. These are things that, we just took on and we didn't even know. And it's kind of like this scratchy Christmas sweater in the middle of summer. It's like, hey, wait, that doesn't fit me anymore. This isn't for me. And when we can take off that core belief, then we can start really rewriting our story. And that's, for me, one of the juiciest and most exciting places to be, is to watch people rewrite their story from a place of true sovereignty and a centeredness. That's another way. And yeah, I guess just working in the creative arts. A friend of mine was once watching me write, and she's like, when I see you create, it's like you're making love with God. And it's true, because I love being alive. I love being able to create. We're all creator beings, whether you consider yourself very logical and analytical or a complete hippie. Like, we're all creator beings. And the more that we can use our hands and create, the more that we can feel tethered and connected to this world. And that's something that I love to inspire into people as well. So if anyone that's listening is interested in working with me, then they can find me on my website, which is marisafranco.com.
Beautiful. Yeah, definitely encourage anybody interested in healing work to reach out to you because you are just so full of wisdom. One of the things I wanted to touch on during this episode too is plant medicine in general is such a new concept for a lot of Westerners. It's still something very much, there's like literally, I think like 2% of the population that's ever tried it, et cetera, here in the United States. So I would love to just dive in slightly with that, if you'd so indulge me. As you've been sitting with plant medicines and working on this healing journey of your own, what are some of the key themes and key takeaways that you would like to share with others about how these medicines have helped you?
These plant medicines have essentially just brought me closer to myself and have also shown me the importance of roles in society. For example, with peyote, a lot of the peyote ceremonies I've sat in have been under the Native American church in a teepee. And within this space, you get to see that when we live into these roles, not as a limit, but as a way of being and a purpose to work with one another, life becomes far more beautiful. An example is, as a teen and going into my early 20s, I had this sort of man hate inside of me that my mom definitely had, and I was carrying without awareness. And then when I went into the teepee, I was watching how these men were essentially pillars for the women, and the women were these flowering vines that created beauty. And a flowering vine cannot flower without a pillar, and a pillar would be quite plain without the flower. And so seeing how, with the benefit and the support of these plant medicines, seeing how the masculine and feminine work in men and women, but also in ourselves, and creating a unification, allowed me to get closer to the core and the essence of who I am, and having far more respect for all sentience, all living beings. And any medicine that you sit with too, it's not, the mind altering is such a funny term for me, because what it actually feels that it's doing is mind expanding. You're expanding into everything that is already here and seeing so many of the dimensions. A lot of people mention that when they sit with psilocybin, that they can see that the earth is breathing. That's not because you're on psychedelics. and it's creating an illusion. It's because the living earth is breathing, but we just have not trained ourselves quite yet to see that that is happening all the time. And what I love so much about these plant medicines is it brings us back into right relationship with this planet that we are stewards of. And we've really forgotten our responsibility, our kuleana here. And what these medicines can do, these spirits can do, is help us reorient why we are here and what our responsibilities are, not just to ourselves, not just to our family, our community, but this living earth. And, rivers have spirits and they have messages for us. Are you listening? The wind, when it moves a certain way, all cultures have learned how to divine or have divination practices in their own way. And whether you're connected to your ancestry or lineage or your teachings, you can do that right now. You can step outside and you can start practicing and teaching yourself the way that feathers fall. What does that mean to you? The way that the river just jumped up when you were thinking something, becoming more aware. That's what these medicines do, is they help you become more aware of who you are and where you are. And we mentioned very briefly of me going to sit with Iboga and being initiated into that medicine and that life way. And Iboga is the master plant and the master teacher. And it's one of the most challenging medicines to sit with as well. So for people who are just kind of testing the waters and wanting to expand their awareness a little bit, I would highly suggest starting in a ceremony with facilitators that are very skilled, if possible, with psilocybin, going to a peyote meeting and being immersed in real community and real family. And, ayahuasca, if you want. Ayahuasca, the way that ayahuasca grows is it goes up into the stars. So the way that plants grow, you can also understand their teachings and their medicines. Ayahuasca is helping you reach to the stars. It's very cosmic. It blasts you open into this space of really oneness and non-linear time. Like, time does not exist with ayahuasca. Peyote is a heart medicine. Its name means shimmering heart. And it also is very masculine and very grounding. It lives and grows really close to the earth. Almost you can't even see it. Their pilgrimage with the Wirarika people, the original stewards of this medicine, where they go out for days and they harvest medicine, and you have to really train yourself to find them. So that medicine helps open your heart, helps bring you back into your body, into this masculine essence that a lot of us are really learning how to recalibrate and bring back into balance. Psilocybin is the mycelial network. It grows underground and it shoots out exactly like our brain and our neural network. So if you want to rewire aspects of your brain chemistry, like, psilocybin is an amazing teacher and spirit, and all of these plants want to help us. Iboga is the root and bark of a shrub in Africa, and elephants love it. Think about elephants. They're wisdom keepers, they're ancient beings, and they even go to that medicine. We've considered so many of these medicines unsafe because they increase our power and help us to remember that we are all these godlike beings who can manifest and create our own destiny in our own life. And when all of our manifested destinies work together to create harmony, that's going to be one of the most beautiful worlds. And that's what I feel that we're moving our way into. Iboga, as I mentioned, is it's a master plant, and it's very challenging, and it takes up to 3 to 4 days to really have the full experience. That's with the flood dose, and that's what I experienced with my initiation. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it's an advanced software. It knows who you are and will bring you back, and any sort of mental patterns or neuroses that you're experiencing, they will be heightened, and you will process them with this medicine, whether you like it or not. That's what so many people experience with their first time with Iboga, is a mental detox. So anything that is preventing you from feeling and being pure love and essence, that will rise to the surface and will be removed and integrated. But it will only be integrated and removed with your help. that's something that a lot of people who enter into the plant medicine world don't fully understand, in my opinion, is that these plants aren't doing the heavy lifting for you. They're just lifting things up for you to move and reorganize. And integration is such a huge aspect of all of this work because, in the beginning of my journey, I would sit with one plant medicine once for the whole year, and I would just work with whatever came up. And now it's interesting because the more medicines that I sit with, I actually don't feel so much altering. I feel just normal and connected to me. And that's an inquiry that I always had when I was watching these shamans and these medicine keepers in these spaces. Like, they're eating medicine with us and they're acting completely normal. How is that happening? And it's just because the plant spirit has merged with the human spirit, and now they are one. And that human is able to transfer and deliver the beautiful messages of these primordial beings into this space. And I just want to add that there because that's really the path that we're moving towards, is unification. And this plant consciousness is ancient and has so much information for us.
There's a few things in there, and for listeners who are new to plant medicine, there's a few things that I know Marisa will agree with me on here that I just want to index and emphasize on. You should always take these medicines with great reverence, and you should always do it with trained facilitators in the art of facilitating plant medicine. These are big, deep, beautiful medicines, all of the ones that she referenced and more. But these are not things that you should take recreationally, nor should you take them by yourself. These are things that you should always, again, take with great reverence. And the other thing that I'd like to highlight as well, as you so beautifully explained to everybody, these are not things that you can take like Western medicine pills, like you just take it and expect to solve your problems. These are things that are going to open a doorway for you to truly clean out your closet, but you do need to integrate it, meaning you need to sit with the lessons and the teachings that the medicine's giving you and integrate that into your daily life. So that might be things like if you struggle with parental relationship issues like I did. I had really terrible issues with my mother, and particularly plant medicine, specifically psilocybin, showed me this beautiful relationship with my mom in terms of healing it, that, we're really similar and we're the same, and I need to forgive her and let things go. Well, that's not like I left that experience completely magically healed and my relationship healed with my mother, but it did give me the boost and the perspective and the shift that I needed to start working on that relationship with myself first, then forgiveness. And then, over the last few weeks, I've been slowly starting to have conversations with her. So these are things that are going to take months, years in some cases to work through and to process, but these are definitely really helpful healing supportive boosts on your path and your journey of healing. So as we talk about plant medicine, a lot of people that are using it or know about plant medicine, they so often have just maybe had like a recreational dose, like a piece of chocolate at a party or something like that. Or maybe they sat with mushrooms maybe in high school or early college days, but they didn't give it the appropriate reverence, and they haven't sat with it in the way that you and I have in a more traditional healing plant medicine facilitated experience. Can you talk to me a little bit about the importance of the reverence around these medicines and hygiene practices before, during, and after that are so essential to the true usage and the appropriate usage of these beautiful medicines?
Yeah, so one thing to remember as you go into this space is plant medicines open us up. So we essentially become walking, living portals. And what has been happening as of recently with this movement of recreationality and also ceremony that's not being held in the utmost reverence is we're opening up spaces and we're not calling in the guardians and not acknowledging the spirits of the land and also not claiming our sovereignty. So spiritual hygiene is such an important aspect of this because we become so open that we want to protect ourselves. And love is one of the highest forms of protection. So going into this space of true loving awareness and also acknowledging the plant spirit and acknowledging the ancestors of your lineages, spirits of the land. If you work with any angelic beings like Archangel Michael or elemental beings, even water as a protector can be something that can be called in. So calling those in as soon as you ingest the medicine or before you ingest the medicine is a protection in the unseen realm until you can then see the unseen realm. And then during that time, you will have all of that protection and that guidance and just the safe haven that is needed to hold the space for a deep and true healing. So you can really go far and deep inside of yourself. And then lastly, when that ceremony is closed, close it with intention. Say, this ceremony is now closed. I give my thanks. And again, call in all of the beings and offer your thanks and just say out loud or to yourself, this space is now closed. And just protecting yourself in that way, because with hygiene, we brush our teeth every day and we take a shower and we cleanse our physical body. Well, we have other bodies. We have an emotional body, an energetic body, an astral body. So just remembering that there's also hygiene that is associated with that. And there are a lot of facilitators that mean well and have good intentions, but sometimes they can slip up and they can forget to put that into practice. And we're responsible for ourselves. So just remembering those practices to make sure that you don't have any weird, funky energy or spirits that are visiting you. And, anytime that you have a visitation that might feel scary, remember your power. Remember that you have God-given powers or creation powers, and you can cast those spirits away. You can say, no, I claim this space as my own sovereign space, and you are not allowed here. So just remembering that we all have those inherent gifts and skills. You don't need someone to do it for you all the time. It might be helpful to have someone do it for you when you're beginning, but ultimately that power is going to be coming from yourself. So I'm glad that you touched on the recreational nature, because a lot of people have only experienced plant medicine in a recreational space, like at a festival or a concert. And, these plant medicines essentially blast us open. So we become incredibly porous and vulnerable and susceptible to other energies. So it's very important, one, to always call in your protectors, your guardians, animals, angels, whoever, water as a spirit to come and just make sure that you're good. That's just number one with any plant medicine, no matter if you're with an experienced facilitator or you're trying it out, is you always bring in that. You're also opening up a portal per se. So remember to close that portal. That's also really important. And then the third one is, as we have experienced medicines in a recreational space, and then you move into a ceremonial space, you'll realize that you actually never really sat with these medicines, because there's been so much interference from so many people around you, or just not being in the mindset. An intention is an aim. So when you have an intention in a ceremonial space with silence and spaciousness and support, that's when you can really dive in deep and receive medicine. So I really encourage those that have experienced only the recreational side to try out the ceremonial side, because it is a world of a difference.
As we continue to talk about the concept of being able to work with our thoughts and to be observers of our thoughts, what are some additional things that you'd like to share with how our thoughts move through us and how we can process things that pop up?
So we don't control our thoughts per se, but we do have a responsibility to tend to these thoughts. So if we have thoughts that we're not really liking, again, curiosity. Curiosity is one of the best medicines that we can have right now, of understanding why we're attracting that sort of texture of a thought into our life. Because there's a resonance that we're carrying in us, probably in the subconscious realm, that is attracting these thoughts. And sometimes even the uncomfortable thoughts are medicine for us to really shake us up and get our attention. And if we're not listening, these waves will become louder and louder. So the prayer is to become quieter and quieter, so these ways of attracting us can become more gentle. So really claiming your ownership and holding that juxtaposition that you are not that. So really keeping those two close to you and just remembering is really an important aspect of it. And the other thing that I would like to mention is in quantum theory and quantum physics, the way that we create our reality is through thought, feeling, and action. We think something, we feel what that thought is like in our body, and then we take action from it. So, for example, let's say that I want to call in divine union and this relationship. I have the thought that I want to call that in, and then I feel what it would be like to have that in my life, and then I take actions towards it. That's how you create your reality. It's literally that simple. But becoming responsible and tending to the garden within our own mind is the key to attracting the life that you want.
Wow. Beautiful work, beautiful information. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to impart wisdom wise for the audience today?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that whatever you're seeking outside of yourself is most likely the medicine that you're here to bring. And if you weren't here, existence would miss you. You have such a beautiful and great purpose here, and I pray and wish that every single person remembers their belonging.
Beautiful. So beautiful and so true. There's one question I always ask everybody on each episode, which is if someone's in crisis right now that's listening and they're struggling and they're not sure if they're going to see tomorrow, what is one piece of advice that you would offer to them to help shake them out of that place and get them on their path of healing?
I'm going to answer this in a story. So, when I was studying with my teacher in Hawaii, a non dualist practitioner, we were in a female only workshop, and there was this woman that entered, and she was a heroin addict and had lived a really challenging life, a single mother of five. And she came into this workshop telling my teacher and the participants that she wanted to die and that she was going to end it for herself. And I was looking around the room just wondering how people were going to react, and my teacher was like, "Okay, great, come in the center of the room and let's have you die." And then my teacher whispered, "Now ask yourself what part of you wants to die." And that's what I want to offer here is your soul most likely does not actually want to die. What does want to die is a piece of you that is holding you back from living fully and living in love. So when you're at a place and in a dark time, again, become your own witness, become your own healer, and ask yourself, what part of me wants to let go? Because it's not your soul. Your soul wants to experience life. That's why it came here. And something is ready and willing to move out, but we have to open our hands and allow it to move through us.
I like literally, I'm gonna cry. Like, oh, wow. That's really beautiful. Wow. I definitely know, just from my own personal experience, but also just being around a lot of others who have struggled so greatly with mental health in my life. My father, my mother. I mean, there's a lot of people that it's so true that there's just one part of them usually that wants to die, anguish, pain, abandonment, whatever it is for you. I love the way that you just said that. I've never heard it put that way. And it's so beautiful. So I hope listeners of you that are struggling, that that you can, as we go back full circle moment here to earlier in our conversation when we were talking about the power of observing and being a witness, to ask yourself that right now. If you're struggling, ask yourself that. What part of me is done? What part of me wants to die? And that's what your intention should be set around, especially as you're sitting with plant medicines.
Mm-hmm.
That is the question that you should ask of the medicines. That's the slice that you should show them that you need the most support with. And I promise they will help you. I know just from my own personal experience, when I first sat with plant medicine for the very first time, I sat with psilocybin for my first experience, and I whispered into the mushrooms, "Please take my anger away." And for me, that was the part that I wanted to die so greatly. And boy, did it serve me well. It really, really beautifully offered me a portal to start healing that wound. So thank you.
I also just want to mention briefly to go back into the divination and using earth as a mirror, just looking at a tree, for example, and seeing that a tree has all seasons of life. There's a time of spring with the new buds that are coming, then the time of summer where the leaves are out and it's proud and brave. It's this Leo energy. And then it slowly moves into fall. The colors are changing. And then winter, the leaves fall to the ground. Now, the thing about leaves falling to the ground, it's actually the tree's intelligence of signaling to itself that it needs compost. It needs fertile soil for the spring to come. So we can look at all of these changes in our life too and say, okay, what season am I in right now? Am I in the blooming? Am I in the maturity? Am I in the dying off? Am I in the changing season? And then when we can see ourselves as that tree, we know exactly what we need. So the times where the leaves are falling off and these pieces of us are dying and transforming, well, actually what's happening is this transmutation of energy, this alchemical process that our soul, or in Hawaiian, it's called the amakua, our higher self, that is actually helping us navigate these times. And we always have all the help that we need, even if it's just the tree in our backyard. You know, the tree, when we hug the tree's hugging us back. And with these medicines that help us expand our awareness, we realize that all of these allies have always been here. They've always been here. The birds that make sounds when we hear them, they're singing to you too. So just noticing what season are you in and allowing that compost, because with the compost, you're able to receive a more fertile life.
So beautiful. Oh, so beautiful. Thank you, Marisa Franco. You guys go follow her, listen to her. I'll hyperlink everything below. Reach out to her to work with her. She is just such an amazing soul, and obviously just such a wealth of wisdom for healing and for exploring your true self and for living your best life. So thank you so much for joining us today and being on the show.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, take a moment to hit the like button, comment below, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.